This is the Kratom Science Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Gallagher, blog and social media writer for KratomScience.com, your source for all things Kratom.
Big Pharma is controlling the FDA, and Big Pharma is essentially, we don't want this plant to be legal. The DEA agrees with the NIDA. Uncontaminated kratom is safe. The very next day, it was gone off their page. 17 years ago, I was a wreck, man. I was a wreck. And had it not been for kratom, I would probably not be here today.
My guest is Wade Harman from Richlands, Virginia. Wade is a former coal miner, now a freelance writer, kratom consumer of 18 years, and host of the podcast Botanical Resistance. There's a link in the description. Ladies and gentlemen,
Wade Harman.
So you're a freelance writer. You write a lot about kratom. You have a podcast called Botanical Resistance. And so Just tell us about what you do around the kratom world.
Well, essentially, back it up. I used to work in the coal mines. And I worked in the coal mines for 10 or 12 years, and I got hurt in the coal mines, and that's what brought on the kratom story for me again. But I was like, I'm not going back in there because I literally could have died. A rock fell on me.
Yeah.
And so I can't go underground anymore. So what do I do? I always had this knack for writing. And so 9-10 years ago, I began to start writing online for different brands, Convince and Convert, Social Media Examiner, some different marketing strategy brands like that. And essentially it targeted people who wanted to build a blog and build a social media presence. And so I began to build my chops by writing small articles like that. And then it began to grow. And as it grew, I began to continue on with my kratom usage. I've been drinking kratom tea for almost 18 years.
Yeah.
And I began to say, you know what? There are people here. It spawned in 2015. And I was like, I love kratom. And I know we say it differently, and I always aggravate people about it, but it does, for me, it doesn't matter how you say it, just as long as you're consuming it, right? But I love kratom, and I began to look for vendors that were reputable who I could help. And so I began to find vendors who would use me writing, and I began to write blog posts for them. I began to do little shows, little Facebook Live shows for them. And this one brand that I work with, they begin to rise up in rankings. So that's basically what I do right now. I currently work with 3 or 4 kratom vendors right now to help spread the word with their individual audience on the usage of kratom, the information, the legislation, and essentially just try to get people involved, and one of the biggest, I guess, habits that we have is we are do nothing people, and we don't like change. And so when we begin to consume kratom tea, we can kind of just go into this dark haze and get into our own little world and not really pay attention to the world around us. But what I like to make sure people understand is there's stuff going on in the kratom community that we need to pay attention to. In 2016, the FDA and the DEA both came out against kratom with a ban. The DEA started to move forward on the ban, and in I think it was 10 days, over 113,000 people had signed a petition that the DEA eventually backed off from it because so many people banded together. And I was pretty impressed. That's a large group of people paying attention. And over the years, since 2016, it seems like that group of people, that band of brothers, if you will, has disbanded, and we're not getting as many results as we were in 2016. Now, hopefully it's not going to take another DEA move before people get off their butts and say, "Ooh, I've got to go do this now." That's not the time to do it. And so, what I want to do with my content, whether it be in a written form or whether it be on the Botanical Resistance show, it is to make people aware. Don't be lazy. Don't. It's not just you in this; it's everybody in this, and we've got to pay attention. And so that's one of the big things that I try to do with any kind of content that I put out, is to make people aware of the facts, whether it be the legislation or whether it be just something about kratom, some cool facts about kratom. Got to be involved.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think the FDA wants to ban kratom?
Oh, I don't know if you really want to know that that or not. Okay, so all right, I went down the rabbit hole. Now this is a very interesting story. I went down this rabbit hole, and this is my own personal opinion. First and foremost, for the listener who's listening to this right now, I am not a professional. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor. I'm just somebody who knows how to research. And I began to write an article on why the FDA wants to ban kratom. Mm-hmm. Well, through my research, I discovered that there was a man who had applied for the synthetic alkaloid in kratom. And I don't have that information right in front of me, or I would tell you. But I began to search for this man. Who is this guy? Let's look for this guy. He's a ghost. Did backtracks. I did Google searches. I did every kind of search imaginable. And finally, something came up on the LinkedIn platform. He did not have a profile. I'm sorry. He didn't have a profile picture. He had a small profile, a written profile, and it directed me to a business. And on that business, I went to the About page and I found him again. He was one of the employees. All right. So I looked and it had an address, and I went to that guy's address. Couldn't find it anywhere. So I went to Google Maps. I'm like, all right, I'm going to find the man who applied for this synthetic patent, this patent on kratom. And the search ended on Google Maps when I typed in the address that he had given on the patent application and the address that matched the home address for his website and the About page. Do you know that address took me to a cemetery?
Wow.
A cemetery. And so for me, the reason the FDA wants to ban kratom is a lot of different conspiracy theories that I could, blast at you right now. And some you will agree with, some you may not. The one that you will agree with is Big Pharma is a $1 billion industry in our corporation. And I say corporation, not country, because that's essentially what this has become. Government has become a business, and the person with the most money has the most power. Big Pharma has spent more money on lobbyists than any other corporation or individual has ever spent. And they do that to push their patents. They do that to push their drugs. Essentially, the things that they want to pass, they're going to get it passed because, it's common knowledge. You can go to your representative of whatever state that you live in right now, and you can find who's donating to. It's public knowledge. And Big Pharma has donated more money to more congressmen and senators than any other company. And so essentially, the long and short of it is Big Pharma is controlling the FDA. The FDA is in the pocket of Big Pharma, and Big Pharma is essentially, we don't want this plant to be legal because think about it, if kratom continues to stay legal, my personal story I came off methadone using
Mm.
kratom. And I'm sorry, I hate to say the word using. For me, it brings a negative connotation.
Yeah.
I came off methadone by drinking kratom tea,
Yeah.
and that essentially that's what they don't want. They're $1 billion industry in methadone and Suboxone alone, and people coming and taking their daily dose or their take homes, and it's a lot of money. You introduce kratom to just the people in the in the United States that are taking methadone daily. You introduce kratom to those people, and you've made a dent in the big pharma checkbook. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And so I believe that the primary reason the FDA, you know, does the FDA want to ban it? Yeah, but I believe they want to ban it because big pharma wants to ban it, and if they don't, then they don't get a paycheck.
I found a resolution in the Virginia General Assembly that is requesting that the Board of Pharmacy study whether kratom should be a controlled substance. Do you have any thoughts about whether the pharmacy board in Virginia is going to be like the one in Ohio and suggest a ban?
I mean, yeah, it probably will eventually get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, my state of Virginia is, I don't want to say it's safe, but
Yeah.
it has the American Kratom Association headquarters in Virginia,
Yes. Yeah.
and I would like to think that they would not let this happen in their own state. I believe it will come down to a vote, a ban vote. Essentially, the kratom lobbyists are fighting so hard for us right now.
Yeah.
People like Mac Haddo and I just interviewed Mac Haddo
Yeah. I
on the
listened to
Botanical
that. That was
Resistance
good.
show. That guy, oh man, you would not believe how many things the American Kratom Association actually does for us. And if anybody hates the FDA, Mac Haddo hates the FDA, and there's things that'll happen, and I'm sure eventually the Board of Pharmacy will it'll get to that point. I think eventually every state will have to fight to keep kratom legal
Yeah.
at one point or another. If you look at Mississippi, over the past 6 months, Mississippi has had cities and different cities ban this as an ordinance, and
Yeah.
now it came in this past week. It came in for the state, and then you know the story. They just killed both bills. So
Yeah.
they would rather their bill die and kill our bill as well as to let the KCPA, Kratom Consumer Protection Act, overshadow the state of Mississippi, and Ohio is coming due again soon. It starts as a small, one guy puts this bill out, and then another one jumps on, and then somebody else jumps on, and then the FDA comes in. Hey, and then in my mind, here's what Big Pharma does: starts shelling out cash. Hey, let's ban this. So yeah, I mean, it could definitely happen in Virginia, but eventually, I see every state having to go through this. Of course, except the states that have already passed the Kratom Consumer Protection Act, of course. But
Yeah.
eventually, I believe every state will have to fight this battle.
You did a few podcasts about the situation in Indonesia. There seems to be different interests there. Like the farmers, of course, want it to remain legal, and then another wing of the government is listening to the FDA here. What do you know about what's going on in Indonesia, and what's the latest there?
The National Narcotics Agency, I believe, they have reported that they're going to impose a ban on kratom and make it illegal starting in 2020, and that was an article that come out in 2019. Of course, all of the farmers, like you said, they're against it. They were going to make sure in the next 5 years the kratom farmer began a crop of this tree, whatever it is. I forget what it was. And so the kratom farmer had 5 years to adjust to the new crop.
Yeah.
And so there was a study done that farming kratom was like 72% more lucrative, and it created more jobs than this other farming industry. And I apologize, I can't remember what it is, but yeah, I believe it's still in their best interest. It's in everybody's best interest, I believe, to keep it legal, because everybody is going to benefit from it.
Yeah. And now we have it legalized in Thailand, and I think it's going to be. It was legalized for medicinal purposes along with cannabis, I think last year, but now the minister there, I forget what the agency's called, of the public health agency, but he said it's going to be fully legal there, which I think it'll open up another market for importing it here too. So I think that would be good for Thailand's farmers as well.
Yeah, most definitely. It's going to be a fight countrywide. And that reminds me, last year, I believe the FDA went over to the Indonesian, was it Prime Minister, and they denied going over there. And then the American Kratom Association followed soon after.
Yeah.
And he did confirm, yeah, they were over here, but the FDA lied and said, no, we didn't make that trip. And so they're actually overreaching. They're going into the Indonesian government and trying to pull strings over there to screw everybody stateside even. I mean, how low do you got to be to do that? Yeah. I don't know a Kratom consumer who doesn't hold a steady job, who isn't a good person, who isn't better because of Kratom tea, and yet here we are. You know, I'm a contributing member to society, and a lot of people are, and we pay taxes, we follow the rules, we don't break the law, and you know, it's just like marijuana and CBD. All of these natural plants were meant for us to consume. There's a ton of things that Mother Nature has prepared for us, and to say, no, you can't have this. I mean, based on nothing, it's sheer lies, and it's no scientific evidence whatsoever. I believe the FDA put in a report that a man died, and they attributed his death to Kratom. Now, look, he had barbiturates and benzos and opiates in his system. Yeah. And yeah, he had Kratom in his system. And it was a shotgun blast to the chest that killed him.
Yeah.
And
that one
but
crazy.
Kratom killed him, you know. Kratom killed him.
They called it Kratom related death.
Yeah. And okay, so right after that, when this, I think it was last year, first part of last year, it may have been even 2 years ago, the FDA began to really come against Kratom again, and they began to say all this stuff. And the NIDA, the National Institute of Drug Abuse, came out with their own article, and they said uncontaminated Kratom is safe. And I screenshot it, man. I screenshot it, and I wrote an article about it. Say, look, the DEA. Okay, so let me back up. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting too excited. So the NIDA writes this article, and inside this article, it's got all these facts on Kratom. And then in the center of the page, they said, we have researched, and we have discovered that uncontaminated Kratom does not cause death. Okay, so they posted it on Twitter. All right, the DEA HQ, that's their Twitter, at DEA HQ, if you want to follow the DEA. I don't know why you want to, but you can keep up with them. So they actually retweeted the NIDA. They retweeted it. So I captured a screenshot right there, and I posted it. I said, look, the DEA agrees with the NIDA. Uncontaminated Kratom is safe. The very next day, it was gone off their page.
Do you think the FDA was behind that retraction?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So
come on, man.
So you said you've been drinking Kratom tea for 17 years, which I think breaks the record for anyone I've talked to. Even the guy the founder of Kratom Science has been into it since like 2007, but that beats him. I think he was in high school then. But
yeah.
So you said, I think you said maybe that your sister introduced it to you.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that
my
right?
sister.
Okay. How did she
Yep.
find out about it? Because of course, it probably wasn't even online.
She actually, I don't know how she found out about it. I believe, and don't get me wrong, but I don't know the entire story. My sister passed away
Oh,
about three
sorry to
years
hear that.
ago. Yeah, she had a brain tumor, and she suffered with severe migraines, and that's a completely different story. But she was taking kratom for the migraines. She didn't know that she had a brain tumor,
Hmm.
and I believe that my cousin, I'm going to give Ronnie Endicott a shout out right here. I believe
Mhm.
Ronnie uh, put her on to a guy out of New England, and she actually, I think she was taking consuming kratom tea for about 3 years, and I was on heroin, I was on OxyContin, and of course a lot of other opiates. And I'll just tell you the whole story. The baseline for me to get up out of the bed just to feel normal was a shot of heroin and about 6 hydrocodone 10s,
Damn.
and that was my baseline, just to
Yeah.
feel normal. Anything after that was the high, was the enjoyment. And so once I just look, I was like, hey, I can't do this my whole life. I don't want to have to rely on these synthetics, these drugs, to live a normal life. So I was like, I'm going to stop. Well, well, you know what happens when you stop all that stuff, especially if you've been doing it for a while. I began to, get the flu-like symptoms and depression, anxiety, all that stuff, restless legs, and couldn't sleep, couldn't, just
Hmm.
just feeling horrible. So, anybody that's taking kratom tea right now understands what I'm talking about. But and so I was like, well, I'm going to try the methadone. And so I began to go to the methadone clinic here in town. And after about 6 months, I was like, well, this is working, but I've got to take methadone every day. So I'm just trading one habit for another.
Yeah.
And so she was like, look, wait, here, try this. It was green powder. And so I was about 3 days, 3 days from not taking my last methadone dose. So I was feeling pretty rough. I was trying to quit methadone. And she was like, here, try this. And to be honest with you, man, I would have ate a bar of soap if I had known it was going to make me feel better that day. Because I would have ate the underpinning out of a trailer that day if it was going to make me feel better. I didn't care what it was. And she told me, so it'll make you feel better. So naturally, I was, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do anything. So I went in. She's like, take it with Tang. And so I went in. I dumped a scoopful into my cup, and I put some Tang in there, and I took a drink, and it was the worst thing I've ever tasted in my life. And she was like, keep going. I promise it'll help you. And I gagged it down, and horrible. Can't stand it. If you remember the first time you drank kratom tea, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And after about 15 minutes, my shakes calmed down, my withdrawal symptoms subsided. I felt like doing something. A couple of months later, I came out of depression. I was normal. I felt good. And that was 17 years ago. And uh, in the coal mines, I busted 3 discs in my back. And right now, the doctors don't even really know how I'm walking. And I told him, he was like, I'm going to put you on OxyContin 80s, and we're going to give you 3 hydrocodone 10s a day, and you're going to do that for the rest of your life. And I was like, no, I'm not either, man. I ain't
Yeah.
doing that. I know what that stuff is, and I know how habitual of a person that I am,
So you got
and
it.
I'm not doing it.
This was after you started use kratom that you got injured in the
Yes,
mines. Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. It gave me enough, gumption to want to go get a job, and
Yeah.
so then it began to I got hurt, and so now I use it as a pain management tool.
Hmm.
And on days where I don't feel any pain, which is rare, I still drink a cup of kratom because it helps the anxiety, the depression. It's just more of a maintenance tool.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things that you need to know about kratom with tolerance issues and switching things up. And I had to learn the hard way. I drank Red Bali kratom for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about tolerance management, so I had to learn that the hard way. But once I figured it out, it's, to this day, it's still helping me. And if you're listening to this right now and you have a problem like I did, and you want to live a normal, healthy life, kratom will help you.
Yeah. And what like specific advice do you have to opiate addicts that want to transition?
Yeah, sure. Okay, this is a great question, and this is something that I experienced myself. Look, if you're coming off of 10 hydrocodones a day, or whatever they're taking now, that's a synthetic. That is a powerful drug that's going to, your serotonin has stopped, and so that's a powerful drug that your body is being used to. A plant is not going to have the same effect as a man-made, Superman pill. So one of the things that you need to do is to stay consistent with it in the beginning. First off, you need to stop all drug use for 3 days. Don't take kratom for 3 days. Don't take anything for 3 days.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a little rough. But if you can get through the 3 days, maybe you can, hibernate and sleep for 3 days or whatever it is. And then when you wake up on that third or fourth day, then your system is kind of cleaned out and your body is craving something, and you can try your kratom. And look, it's not going to, I guess a lot of addicts, and I was the same way. I was like, okay, is this going to make me feel like, I used to feel? It doesn't make you high.
Yeah.
And there's scientific evidence for that, but it's an agonist. And so what that does, it kind of dims that opioid receptor just a little bit, and it helps. So once you start taking that consistently for about a month, you're going to start to see those withdrawal symptoms subside completely, and your body will be back on track. And look, that third day when she handed me that kratom powder, I was ready to try anything, and she just kept going. Look, don't stop, Wade. Keep going. You can, it's going to get better, and it did. And so, I would suggest something red, a red strain for someone who is dealing with opiate abuse,
Mm-hmm.
and that's probably the best option for you.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's good advice. So how do you drink it in a tea, or do you just do toss and wash still?
Yeah, I'm old school. Yeah, I drink it. I put it in a cup, and I put Hawaiian Punch. Those little drink mix packets.
Yeah,
those
that's
Hawaiian
better than
Punch
Tang.
packets. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dude, I gained like 40 pounds when I was drinking it with Tang. That stuff's got so much sugar and fat. Anyway, yeah. I figured it out. So I take the Hawaiian Punch packet, dump it in there with my mix. I fill it up, and I just sip on it. It takes me about an hour. Just sip on it. And I've tried the toss and wash. I've actually got videos of showing different ways that you can take kratom, and it's pretty funny, the toss and wash. There's some experts out there that can really do that very well, and I am not one of them.
Yeah. So I guess you already said you take more on days when you're feeling pain, but you just have a cup in the morning.
I take about 5 grams every morning, and usually by 2, I'm ready for another.
Yeah.
And that's another 5 grams. And I take, days I'm in pain, I'll take 3 doses of 5 grams. Yeah. For people who are dealing with the opiate struggle, find that perfect dose in the beginning. You can always taper back. If you need more, take more. Just don't be using drugs with it. That's the key.
Yeah.
Don't do anything else with it.
Kratom is pretty challenging for vendors to market, and I know you do marketing. Like ads are banned from Facebook, Google, Twitter. Credit card processing is band. How do you get around those hurdles as somebody that is in the business of marketing?
Well, one of the first things that I tell vendors who are looking to expand their business and build an audience is to continue using the social media channels as they see fit. Now, some Facebook pages are not even allowed to post different things about Kratom. Others, if you're a vendor who sells CBD products, they're more lenient on the CBD products. But if you're trying to build an audience with your Kratom business, one of the best things to do is to start a Facebook group and make sure your audience knows not to say hot words like order or anything like that.
Yeah.
And begin doing live videos. I've had great success with a couple of vendors where I'll go into their Facebook group and give away some Kratom and do live video feeds and build that group up. Another great way is to find, a great podcast and sponsor a podcast show. I've had many podcast sponsors who have had great success. I'm one of, I think, 2 or 3 Kratom podcasts on Apple Podcasts right now, and there's a huge market for it. And Facebook does, Facebook is the biggest social media channel out there, and wouldn't you know it, they don't allow Kratom ads. So there's other ways around that, and a sponsorship is a great way to do that because people are always finding new podcasts to listen to.
Yeah.
And you've just had great success. But one of the things that I've found is to keep creating content that your audience loves, the content that'll make them want to stay. Yeah, you want them to buy, but you want them to continually keep you in mind, that frame of marketing that's called top of mind. If you're top of mind with your audience and the people that you're targeting, then you're always considering these people. So in order to always consider, you have to figure out what they want, what they like, what they need. And yeah, they want, like, and need Kratom, but they also like information. They like to be updated. They like a lot of different things. Video is the number one content consumption online right now. So start some YouTube channels. And I know it's a little iffy on YouTube as well, that you got to be careful. But that's one of the reasons why I tell people that to build that Facebook group and start doing those live videos in the group. If you have a website, you can host your video on Vimeo, and Vimeo don't have a problem with Kratom at all. And you can start putting videos on your website about Kratom, how to take it, Kratom potentiators, like turmeric and magnesium, and just give them information that will keep them coming back. It reminds me of the Geek Squad. The CEO of the Geek Squad, when he first started out, he was repairing people's computers. They were calling him, and he was telling people how to fix their computer absolutely free. And the people, his investors, told him, they said, "What in the world are you doing? You need to be charging people for this service." And he says, "Well, I could charge them for this." He said, "But who do you think they're going to come to when they have a problem that they can't fix?" He says, "Are they going to go to some random Joe out of the Yellow Pages, or are they going to come back to the guy who's been showing them how to do it for free for the past year?" Yeah. He said, and that's the key with content. Content is free. The consumption is free. And when it's time to reorder, they're going to go back to the person who's been giving them all of that free information. And content is the best. It really is king in all markets and all niches.
And, okay, I got one more question. I was listening to your podcast, and you said discovering Kratom is like opening the door for the rest of your life. Can you explain more about what that means?
Oh, man. That's a personal quote, I guess. Mm-hmm. There's so many things that, life just happens to people sometimes. You can look at Facebook and get depressed. You can look at Facebook and another kid has been kidnapped. Someone else has committed suicide. And, when I think about my own past experiences and my own bad decisions and all the wrong choices that I've made in my life, the one thing that I can always count on is the Kratom. And it's true for a lot of people. Now, don't get this wrong. I'm happy. I feel successful. I'm married to a great woman. I have 2 beautiful sons who's going to keep my name going. And I love what I do. I love it. But there was a time when my life was a wreck. And the people who see me now see me in my profile picture. I'm wearing a suit and I'm hugged up to my beautiful wife. But 17 years ago, I was a wreck, man. I was a wreck. And had it not been for Kratom, I would probably not be here today. And I do owe my life to it. And it did open the door. If I had continued down the path that I was going, it would have surely led down a destructive road. Like so many people who don't know about Kratom, they have taken that road and not been able to return. I've seen it over and over again, and I feel sorry for those people because they don't know. And whenever I first took that first gag drink of Kratom, and 15 minutes later I said, "Where has this been all of my life? Where has this been? Why didn't I know about this?" I would have been drinking this a whole lot sooner than now. And there's people out there that will never hear this podcast. There are people out there that will never hear about Kratom. And those people are the ones that are missing out on one of the best opportunities to get their life back in order. And that's why I say it can open the door to a brand new world, because it really does open your eyes to different things and different perspectives.
Thanks a lot, Wade Harman. There's a link to Wade's Vimeo account, his podcast, Botanical Resistance, and his Twitter account in the description. The music is by Risey. The song is called Memories of Thailand. The Kratom Science podcast is written and produced by me, Brian Gallagher, for KratomScience.com. Take care.